time for your love coach. Let's find out if you're ready for love. Here's your marvelous host, Nikki Lee.
Hello, and welcome to Ready for Love Radio. This is your host and love coach, Nikki Lee. Today, we are going to have a slightly different conversation. We're actually going to talk about, y'all are going to love this combination. We're going to talk about book, birds, engineering, motorcycles, and the erotic side of men. How about that for a combination?
I like it.
I like it. I like it, too. I was sitting here going, what all are we going to cover today? So, how about the male erotic journey? I like that. That's cool, too. All right. So my guest today is Christopher Hoffman. Chris, it's awesome to have you with me today.
It's a pleasure. I can't wait to see what happens.
I know. I've been thinking about this going, this conversation could take a whole lot of different directions, and I'm not real sure which way we're going to go. So, you know what? I think your vehicle that you've designed is the perfect one for this conversation because it can go in all kinds of directions.
It can.
All right. So let me just give you just a short bio, and then we'll dive right into this. Okay. So Chris is an author, an innovator, and a provocateur. He's turned his creative explorations into one visceral story after another. As an innovator, he's appeared on one network television program such as The Today Show, Discovery Channel, and The Gadget Show. I see The Gadget Show, and I think of Q from James Bond, and Q was my favorite character by far. I just have to tell you.
Oh, me too. Totally.
Q is the reason I watched James Bond. It really was. That and the cars. So, Chris's life is defined by innovation and entrepreneurship in harmony with erotic expression and awakening. He now takes his personal exploration and distills them down into impactful yet always easy to grasp concepts that engineers can embrace. I looked at this. And it says, after barely making it out of high school, he went on to design industrial robotics for 15 years in the Detroit auto industry. That's quite a leap you made there.
Yeah, no kidding. From the factory to up and my head engineer guy to a guy that's found himself in his full erotic expression.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Interesting. And then you woke up and started questioning the world that you built around yourself, quite literally built around yourself. That's kind of interesting. Yep. And this Ryno Motors, we're going to talk about that too because this interesting stuff you got going on. We could talk for 2 hours actually, but interesting. Okay. So it says your main passions are innovation, erotic awareness, and the courage to be vulnerable. It's an interesting combination of stuff you got going on there.
Yeah.
So now, I think the first thing I want you to do is describe your book to me. Tell us a little bit about that first, and then we're gonna get into some other things.
Yeah. So my book is sort of like a memoir style. It's about 20 stories. In the background is running my startup company around Ryno Motors, which is a company that manufactures a single wheel electric motorcycle, sort of like a Segway scooter, 10 miles an hour, 25-mile range. So there's this whole, building it in the garage and then finding my, first investor and raising money and all the, crash and burns associated with that. But in the foreground is leaving my marriage about 7 years ago as an up-in-my-head engineer guy, just kind of stuck in my own little box, and then going out and having all these erotic experiences with women, and all the lessons that I've taught, that I've been taught by these women, and how I feel like, they're really impactful, important lessons to share with other men. So what I did in this book was I sort of, I tell this over-the-shoulder, look of a guy trying to figure himself out, in the bedroom, and then embed this, little teaching or a little story, moment in each story that engineers can use. And in a way that, you get them to read it and they'll learn something in the process, I hope, instead of having to read some manual or go to a bunch of Tantra classes. So I've distilled down, a lot of, useful concepts about, just how to get over yourself and find your true expression in a way that it rocks along and it's, can't put it down page turner that makes it easy for engineers to sort of get their head around this stuff and, maybe, somehow change the world in some incremental way.
Right. Now, I've met a lot of engineers over the years, and I actually, when I was a kid, I was going to be an architect. That was my big thing I was going to do, and I actually graduated from high school with a certification in drafting, and I worked for a surveyor for about 7 years out of high school, and yeah, so I mean that's actually where I started. I've kind of gotten off course from that a little bit. So, so I kind of started in all that kind of sort of vein. But like I said, so I've dealt with and worked with a lot of engineers over the years, and I actually was a partner in a home improvement business for a while.
Serious geek.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't know all this fun stuff about me, and neither did my listeners actually. So, but sex isn't usually something they talk about, deeply. I mean, they're all interested in it, but it's not something that they delve into on a deeper level. So right. This. It's kind of unusual that you would delve into this in such a deep and profound sort of way, isn't it?
I agree. It's like the engineer. It's funny because he's such a great catch. I mean, engineers are kind of they're heroes in a way. The things that engineers build and the way they make our lives better and the untold stories. But it's through the very fact that they get good at building something that they can kind of hide behind the thing they build and figure they're good enough. Right. So that once the engineer figures out how to build a machine that coins out money, they've got security. And they really don't have to evolve, too much farther to, live amongst other people and communicate and be transparent and be a little bit vulnerable so people will trust them. All those social skills really go by the wayside, or, engineers never really can find those social skills, so they become engineers to find a place that feels secure.
Right. Interesting. Hadn't thought about it like that, but that's true. Huh. Okay. Yeah. Well, like I said, I mean, all the ones that I've worked around all these years, this is never a topic that came up.
Doesn't have to.
Yeah.
But, if you want to have this rockin' female partner, a woman that's not only got your back but climbs up on your back and bites you on the shoulder to let you know she's there, that takes skill.
Right. Interesting.
To, get over yourself and find your ability to allow other people to be who they are, and right. Stop trying to be your performance, and and let go of your anxiety, and just be in a way where women can find you and go, oh, that dude is in his body, that I can trust that dude, or that dude isn't looking for all this exterior validation. He's just quiet and peaceful in himself. That makes me want to open to him. And then through his leadership, by making offers that women can respond to, he creates structure. And so these are all skills that, engineers don't really have because they don't have to.
Right. Interesting. All right. Now, speaking as far as engineering and building and constructing and design, because the design part is the part that just fascinates me. Because, I love right. the creative and the designing and all that sort of thing. And I actually do a lot of that. And that's one of the things that really drew me into promotional work was the design and the graphics and all that sort of thing. And I still do a lot of that. Tell us about the bowerbird and how that kind of segues. How you like that segue? Okay, because that's going to take us to Ryno Motors here in a minute. Right. Tell us how that segues into the erotic portion of what we're going to talk about.
Excellent. Yeah, so the bowerbird is my mascot. It's kind of my, I use this as a metaphor to talk about, how you have to find your own erotic awakening to be a great designer. And so what happens is the bowerbird is this ugly little bird from New Guinea that, it doesn't have any peacocking feathers to use. So what it does is it builds this above-ground nest, so as if it's erotic little bachelor pad display for females to come by and judge him. And so it looks like sticks and twigs, and they'll go find just only blue flower petals and ornament the whole thing. And then they'll put like bottle caps around it. So if you go online and look at bowerbird bowers, they're gorgeous. And the funny part is the young bowerbirds maybe get laid once in a whole season, and the older bowerbirds are killing it. So how did the older bowerbirds figure how to just keep tweaking, and modifying their bower so it resonates more as an erotic display? So I think that's fascinating. And so what I do is I talk about like the designer that designed the Jaguar XKE, for example, gorgeous flowing lines of a sports car, right? And this is an engineer that, he came out of the aircraft industry, and the Jaguar, was way ahead of its time with disc brakes and stuff. But if you look at that car, like, how did the engineer design a car like that? What I feel is like he must have felt some sort of like erotic feeling in his body. He must have, known what he wanted to feel like when he saw that car. And then he kept pushing the clay around until the car recreated the feeling he had in his body.
So now you're speaking my language. Okay. Love this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So it's like poetry. Poetry, you put a bunch of words together that recreate the same feeling you had, that you want to convey with your readers. And so when they read that poem, they get the same feeling. Well, it's the same as design. So that designer had to embody something in himself that sort of like allows him to create this Jaguar, which is the same as, a bower. So what I talk to engineers is like, until you find that ability to own your own erotic expression in your body, you're never going to really be able to design something beautiful. And that's the same thing that I had to go through when I was designing the Ryno bike, because I went from a stiff, designing boxy machinery kind of guy to going to dance, dressing up in costumes, and starting to experiment with my sexuality. And it was through that process that I started to wake up and just go, whoa, when I look at paper and I'm scribbling, it gets better until it finally feels like it's resonating. And then it feels like it's resonating, and I build something and show it to somebody else. They go, whoa, dude, that's amazing. So it takes a whole waking up process. And we can talk later. I want to talk later about projection and how that's assigning women sexual currency, and how you're looking at external stimulus for your erotic experience. But that's the opposite of feeling something in your body that you own in your body, and you can access it and then use it to design with.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, I was looking on Wikipedia, and I was looking up the bowerbird, and I mean they've got an entire section in there about about building the bower and the whole mating process, and it's just it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating.
Right.
Listeners, y'all gotta look this up. It's fascinating the way it describes it, and how detailed it is, and how the female makes her decision, and it's cool. It's really cool to read over. So definitely take a look at that. But and at some point we should talk about how in our culture that whole peacocking thing is backwards. So let's make sure we circle through that too. Well, I like how you went through that, and the whole the culture has it wrong. I've never heard anybody else describe it that way, but I like how you explained that. And I like the idea that it should be flipped around the other way. I like the idea of men, turning into. I just like the idea of it being turned around the other way for a change. So I think we definitely need that.
Do you want to talk about that right now?
Yeah, let's do it. I like that idea.
Okay.
Ladies, perk up your ears and listen. This is an awesome idea. Go ahead. Let's explain that.
All right. So this is what in the animal kingdom, when the males and the females have equal access to resources, right? Got to remember that.
Right.
The peacock in this example, with the feathers, has nothing, but its feathers to, compete against other males for the attention of females. So what it's doing is making an offer and a presentation, aren't I great? And how it animates its feathers maybe is, something to give a female, resonance on what they are. But eventually a female opens a channel for connection, right? In our culture, the whole thing's backwards. So men project onto women and think that they're peacocking. And then when women don't I'm sorry. So women are peacocking. Men respond as if they're peacocking, and then when the women don't come forward, men get angry.
Right.
So all the anger in our culture, in the male culture, towards women, is around this, like, they're not creating a channel coming forward. And the truth is, women don't owe men jack shit.
True.
Women are not. Women are not the ones that are generators. Men need to generate an unattached offer that a woman can respond to. And when she responds, she shouldn't have to do anything but step forward. So men create an offer, men create structure, men create an invitation, and then when a woman comes forward, she's free to animate, whatever's going on in that structure. Awesome. But, it's not the other way around. So that's why it's backwards in our culture, and it's really sad. And, we can go on. I mean, the whole, projection in our culture is an outsourcing of your own erotic expression. So, and if a man just starts assigning a woman sexual currency, and it's like, oh, she's fat, she's awesome, she's hot, and high fives their bros, that's like an approved way of having your sexuality. Because if you really own your own sexuality and you go up to a woman privately and say, you know what, when you talk about that whole train of thought, when you express yourself that way, I get inspired. I really feel like I just want to know you a little bit better, and I just thought I'd share that with you. Now, that's something a woman can respond to. And what a dude is doing is he's opening himself up to be influenced by the feminine. And that's a threat to the collective. Because if you look at the patriarchy and, the male-dominated culture, they don't want to be influenced by women. They don't want to be judged by women. It's never going to happen. So when you're like a peacock and you're opening up a channel with a female, what you're trying to do is pass on your own DNA. It's a highly individual act of choice. And that's a threat to the collective because they don't want you to make your own choice.
Well, at that point,
right?
At that point, you're actually giving power to the women. Heaven forbid you give power to them.
Exactly. No one let that happen. No.
Can't.
No.
No.
So,
Can't give power to women.
No, at all. Right. And what, let her natural select me? That's never going to happen. It'd be nice if we had a little bit more of that in our culture right now. But, So that's where men get shamed in their sexuality. So the male-dominated culture shames men for their sexual expression because they don't want to make their own individual choices. And that's where men can claim their own freedom. Is you know what? Fuck all you guys. I'm just going to choose this woman and I'm going to go have sex with her because I feel like it.
No.
No. And she has consented to have this encounter with me because we feel like it.
Oh, see, now you're talking crazy. See?
Total crazy, right? So, we're all nodding in unison to the, male-dominated, demand for conformity. And it's just time to, can we just get along together? Can we allow women back into the workplace? Can we actually allow women to initiate the men, through their, asking men to get out of their feeling state and get out of their emotionality and become a little bit more stoic and start making choices that they're held accountable for.
Accountability?
Right.
Oh my goodness. Next thing you want people to be responsible for what they do. Come on now.
Oh my gosh.
That's like something I would
have that. No, just hide. I didn't make that decision. No, you didn't make that decision. There's no having a dialogue? What, allowing other people to influence my decision? No.
Wow. And they let you talk about this stuff? Wow.
Well, I hope nobody listens to this. We might get in trouble.
Wow. Wow. Good thing it's internet radio. Whew, they'd take us off the air otherwise. Good thing the owner of the station likes me. Okay.
Good. That'd be you.
Otherwise, he might cut it off or something. Whew. Okay.
So that's
Wow.
it in a nutshell. I mean, and my whole thing about trying to help men find their own erotic expression and like claim their erotic dignity. We can't do any of that work until we understand, the culture we're stuck in. That's
Right.
the first step. You can't expect a woman to open up to you and really like fully express herself to you when you're carrying around all this patriarchy, and
Right.
when you're carrying around what like the other thing I want to wrap is like. They say, oh, well, men still peacock to women. No, all they're doing is showing women the financial security and the assets that they bought, in a culture that has taken away women's access to the same resources.
Right.
So when men show women stuff, all they're doing is showing women the stuff that women should have had access to in the first place.
Right. Right.
So it's so stacked against women, it's not even funny.
Yeah. Well, so many things are stacked against women. I mean, they just are. It's been centuries of let's take the power away from women and make sure that they don't have any power.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I'm not saying men have to like fix all this immediately, but they have to be aware of it and like admit that they're conscious of it before they expect women to like create a strong bond and go out into the world, as an equal couple.
An equal couple.
Right. And I'm not saying like let's not get like tangled up in like the feminist thing where like they'll never be equal men, And I'm a fan for differentiation, the masculine and the feminine stuff. But I'm talking like equal access to resources, equal level of power, same,
right.
That shit.
I completely agree with you on that one.
Great.
There's definitely a difference between men and women. I completely agree with that, but as far as equal footing, I'm good with that too. So
yeah,
awesome. All right, see, we're on the same page. I like that. It's always
good.
Nice
well,
when
that's the beginning.
very, very nice when that happens, and I completely agree with feeling. I'm not all this. The whole you've got to. Not the whole be overly emotional, but feel what's going on, and especially feel what's happening with your body. I like that. Don't get into situations and not feel what's happening with your body. That drives me crazy when people don't do that. So
yeah, it's a huge sensory receptor. Like take advantage of it and tune it in, and like learn how to trust people just on their vibe, that kind of stuff. But circling back, what I meant by for women to help men get out of their feeling state is a lot of what happens to men is they get kind of like this is for engineers especially, you get a little bit anxious and you feel a little bit unworthy, and you seem to need to be validated by certain things. So you need to be validated by women or validated by some sports activity or some there's this validation need that needs to be fed. And whether it's conscious or unconscious, it sort of keeps you a little bit, in this kind of feeling state of wanting to please people. Okay. But what happens is that's how people manipulate you. Because what you're doing is showing them the little portal where they can feed you candy. And as a man that needs to create structure for a woman that feels safe, if he has this open wound that just people can figure out how to feed candy to it, whether it's, con men or, gambling or, whatever addictions, you can be manipulated and led off into some other direction. So it's not the flirting that dudes do. It's the fact that they're, needing to be validated by the feminine in a way where they'll just get led off somewhere. So it's the challenge for dudes is to seal that off, with leadership and containment. So, the women that you're with feel like you're in charge and you're looking at the horizon and you've got, a container that they can feel secure in. So
all of those things too, I would think, make vulnerability extra difficult.
Well, it's good. I love that's a perfect next question, because vulnerability, the way I define vulnerability for a man is for me to say something that, that stays true to myself where I may risk, not getting something I want. So I tell this great little story. I say, I'm on my first date with a woman, and she's talking all about gardening. She's totally into gardening. She's like passionate about gardening. And and she finally's like, well, what about you? It's like, well, I love your passion about gardening. I really respect that, and I can really feel how exciting that is for you. But I'm actually into monster trucks.
Okay.
Monster trucks is my thing, and right there, he's being true to himself. He could lose the date right there, but the truth is, maybe she likes to roll around in the mud and dress in camo. He doesn't know. You never know. So that's being kind of vulnerable. That's being true to yourself. And what that does is that makes you feel safe to a woman, because you're not pulling for validation. You're not saying, oh, I like gardening too. I like, I'll build raised beds. All that does is make a woman feel like you're like trying to match her thing. Right. But if you're staying like in your sense of security and space and like, look, this is my thing. What do you think? Like this is my peacocking feathers. This is who I am.
Right.
Now you feel safe to people, and that's not only women, that's in business, and anywhere you go. Like, who are you? Say who you are and be clear about it. So that's what vulnerability is.
Well, at least put it out there. I mean, if the person isn't into it, they're not into it, but at least put it out there and give them a chance,
Totally. Mm. And then if they say yes, you're rocking it. You're doing something you love doing.
Well, they could, maybe they're not into it, but they're open to hearing more. You never know, Totally. Give them a chance.
Totally.
Maybe she could be interested in monster trucks.
Totally. She just might. It's kind of dirty. Maybe can we monster truck our way up to this place where there's this rare plant that I've always wanted to go look for?
The stands do vibrate. I mean, you never know. So.
You never know.
Crazier things have happened.
That's right.
Interesting. All right. And I seem to live in the monster truck capital of the world here, so.
Yeah, I bet you do.
No joke.
Right. Slinging that shit all over the place.
Hey, there's actually a monster truck show this weekend. So tell me, why is it important, do you think, to and we may have sort of covered this, but let me ask you anyway. Why is it important to address the culture for men to perpetuate talking about how to reclaim their own erotic dignity? I like the idea of an erotic dignity. Tell us about that.
Well, here, I'll tell you a quick story.
Okay.
I go to this. Yeah. So I go to this men's salon every month, and this is not like a men's group where you're talking about all your problems. It's like city planners and visionaries, and these are all these guys that get together and talk about future stuff and aesthetics, and we just pick a topic, etc. And it's pretty serious, heady stuff. And we went around the table and said, "What's everybody been up to recently?" And I mentioned I just finished my book, and they said, "Oh, awesome! Well, read us a story." And I said, "All right." So I cracked it open and I read the story about my first date in 18 years after, I was actually still towards the end of my marriage, and I talked my wife into letting me have a girlfriend. And I wrote this story about what that was like, to like meet this, tattooed up, dreadlock wearing, yoga teacher, at a workshop and end up at her house. And I'm reading this story, and it's detailed, what's going on. And I finished the story, and I picked my head up, and in the room, and all these guys are like all of a sudden sitting back in their chairs and talking about how they miss their cock and they miss sexuality with their women. And it was the weirdest thing. They were kicking it back in a way where like all of a sudden it was okay to talk about sexuality in infinite detail for these older men. And so it's changed the vibe in the room. It was profound. Yeah, and so there's something about like coming to grips with like the culture we're stuck in, how we all feel small, we don't get to voice. Like in that room, I've been going there for a year. Occasionally a dude might say, "Yeah, I really was like had an argument with my wife, and now we sleep in separate beds," or something like that. It's this tiny little like story, and everybody goes, "Oh, sorry, dude." But so in the culture that we're stuck in, it's so oppressed for dudes, and there isn't anything that ties your like erotic dignity to your health and your ability to be effective in the world and your like full expression. Those things aren't prioritized side by side. So until we kind of understand this mousy little place we get to navigate through, and we don't even know how to stand up because we don't know what we're standing up in, we have to have that conversation before we start talking about like unplugging your cock from your ego and plug it into your heart.
Interesting. So does it seem like there's no middle ground between not talking about it and just locker room talk? Is that kind of what we're saying?
I think there has to be some level of awareness that starts chipping away at the like uncontrolled bravado, because dudes are so like, yeah, the locker room talk stuff is a good example because you can't even like get out of like the body language of that, until you kind of pick your head up and like look out over the horizon a little bit more. It's this trauma response, where everybody's just kind of their body's almost shaking from the trauma of the culture we're stuck in, and then you try to say something reasonable to a woman that walks by with your four bros, without catcalling her or something.
Right.
It's almost impossible. I would recommend for any man to like take some classes or become aware of what you're stuck in, because it's hurting yourself, your own physical, well-being. You need to sort of like shake off this like lead jacket and start, walking towards something that vibrates more healthy in your body.
It is. It's just our whole culture and society has got it so that, you can't. It's just so. It's like we're all so strangled that you just can't talk about it. Even the fact that I have this radio show and I'm treated so ridiculous by people when they find out I have this show. They don't even ask what I talk about. It's just the fact that I have even a quote-unquote relationship radio show is treated as so bad by people without even any details about it. They don't even bother to ask about details. It's just considered to be wrong. Because
it's a threat to the patriarchy. It's a threat to the collective.
Exactly.
You might make your own choice.
Oh, heaven, no. No. Now if they looked at my archives, they probably really have problems with it. But, they don't even bother to ask what I talk about. And I've got a really detailed about page explaining about the show. And that's like even family members of mine have never bothered to ask about the show, about why I do it or what I talk about. They don't even care. They just their opinion is the fact that I do it is an issue, and they think it's horrible that I have the show. That's just where it stops.
And that's just preaching to the choir. That's taking place in the dominance hierarchy, and what the dominance hierarchy is you marginalize the people below you and you fear the people above you. And by taking your place and pointing at the outside world and saying, I'm with everybody, don't forget to include me when the food rations come out. That's all that is.
That's it. It's pathetic. And the fact that I'm like, well, I'm going to do it anyway. It just irritates them to no end. I'm like, oh, whatever. Going to do it anyway. But wow. Yeah, I don't know. It's ridiculous that our culture is like that, but it is. It really, really is. Okay, so now you talk a lot about modeling vulnerability, and like I said, I just covered this a couple weeks ago in a show. So how can people model vulnerability? Just a little bit more detail, because like I said, it's something that I think people have a lot of issues with vulnerability, so it never hurts to kind of drive that home a little bit.
Yeah, it's a great topic. And the way that I frame it up is, so if you think about your psyche as having demons in your basement,
okay.
This is the place where my fear and my lack of self-worth and all these my deeper emotions kind of live. And then there's what I call strategies and tactics that sit up on top of that. So most of us, in our ego, use strategies and tactics to make it through our day. And, we try to explain ourselves, and we try to demonstrate our character, and we try to, talk about who we want people to think we are, all that stuff. And the minute you get into any kind of a confrontation where it starts getting a little dicey, the strategy part just is not going to work. So the modeling vulnerability is you don't want to be, defenseless. You want to speak from your experience. So instead of saying, you're really pissing me off right now, you say, I'm having this feeling of collapsed fear. And I'm having this feeling of, I just feel kind of inadequate right now. And, there's ways that I could feel better. I would prefer if, these other things happened. And if that changed, that would make me feel better. So it's not like you're telling other people they're wrong. You're not making it their fault. You're speaking from your own experience. And what when I say it, I say, speak from your demons. So, or speak from your, this dungeon basement. And it's okay to, we all have these, traumas that we grew up with. That's, our ancestors pass them down to us. We carry these experiences. But to speak from those experiences builds connection. It's a vulnerable, exchange. When I speak from my own experience, somebody can feel me, and they don't feel like they need to defend themselves against anything. And, the other tactic I use when as far as modeling vulnerability is if you're in a conflict with somebody, talk about what happened and how it affected them, and never talk about why you do that shit. Because if you never talk about why you do that shit, I don't have to defend it, because I can be transparent about what I did and how it affected you. So it keeps me in my sort of curiosity. It allows the other person to stay in their vulnerability and explain their experience in a calm, methodical, curious frame of mind. But, people that aren't skillful want to just go after, why I do that shit and try to solve the problem. But there is no problem, because why I do that shit is my own business. And that's who I am.
True.
So there's a whole little cycle in there that requires some skill to learn. But, man, you figure out how to, speak from your demons and, remind people that we're not going to talk about why I do that shit right now, and you can just cruise through the world in, this sense of regulation and peace and harmony and, comfort. So that's the goal. It's not being a better, ninja, attack, whatever.
Right. Interesting. This is something I like to do, and I like to think about, ask for what you want and then just shut up and just let the person decide if they're going to give it to you. That's what I do. I'm like, you know what? This is what I want. Now, you make a decision.
Right. It's not my job to increase my chances of getting it. My privilege and my patriarchy, turns me into a little white liar. I'm not a white liar; that's a terrible term, but into a little. You're telling these little lies because you believe you already deserve the thing you're asking for, or you're trying to guilt the person into saying yes. So you don't have a right for any of that. We don't have a right to receive anything. All we can do is ask for it and shut up and let them decide what they're going to do.
That's it. My thing is, nobody's entitled to anything. You're especially not entitled to something if you didn't earn it. So just say, this is what I want, and then let the person make a decision.
That's right.
That's simple. Completely agree with you.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what is this? You said that men usually expect for women to agree to a request to entertain him. So instead of making her an offer, then she can respond to it. Now, explain that to me.
Yeah. So, you're on your first date. Finally, you're going to end up in bed with a woman. So we're climbing into bed kind of for the first time. We're trying to figure out, what's going on. Okay. And there can be, on a man's side, there can be a certain amount of wanting to perform something, to make sure that he feels like he's valuable. But what happens, too, is men expect women to entertain them. So the first move sometimes is like, well, do something sexy. Or a woman's, somehow pressured to feel like, oh, I've got to do something sexy here to get this guy to be interested in me, or to get his juices flowing or something. But for a man to expect some woman to entertain him is really asking her to take her armor off first.
Well, what if I want him to entertain me first?
Say again?
What if I want him to entertain me first?
Well, awesome. Then you can ask to entertain me and shut up. If he wants to do that.
Let him decide.
But men insult women by expecting them to like somehow entertain them right off the bat, and that doesn't create leadership. Then we need to like be making offers that she can respond to, and making an offer is simply, like, look, the thing is, I'm like smearing lube on my leg, and then I'd like you to like smear your pussy up and down on my leg and grab my cock at the same.
Oh, okay.
What do you think about that? And she'd be like, that's kind of edgy, but I could do that. So that's just an offer, and she can do it, and she knows that it's what you want. But that's not asking her to entertain you. Asking her to entertain you is like, well, shake your tits, or like, wiggle your ass, or like, go down on me, or, start asking her to perform. That's not leadership. That's, and again, it's the biggest, goal, I think, in any kind of sexual encounter is how do you ask somebody else to just be themselves? The invitation, and, for me at this point in my life is like, look, here's a chance for you to just find something in yourself that you've never really had a chance to access because nobody ever asked. What would you like to enact in this moment? There's nobody here but you and I.
Right.
I'm at peace with just whatever's happening, and like, what would you do, that just kind of feels like you just feel like doing it, And she's like, oh, all right, well, I've always had a little bit of shame around, whatever. I'm going to do that. And you're like, awesome. And then you watch that go down, and you go like, oh, well, if you're going to do that, then I'm going to do this. And she's like, okay, dude, that's awesome. And then you start trading, revealing yourself and like your honest sense of like who you are. And to me, that's got endless, I can do that for 3 hours.
Right.
Where if you're just in your performance and you're expecting somebody to entertain you and all those things, it's just like, oh my gosh.
I like that. Very cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. All right. I really do like that. Interesting. All right.
It's a practice. And I mean, it's and the other thing I could add to that is in a healthy relationship, what you want to get to is I own my own choices as far as how much I want to open myself to this experience. So how open do I want to be to you based on the signals I'm getting? And I have a right to be like half open to you and still have sex with you, and it'd still be okay because, like, all right, dude, like, thank you for showing up. I know you're not fully revealed because we've only been dating 2 or 3 weeks. That's awesome. And she's in charge of opening up to me based on the information that she's been given. So my job is to give her accurate information of who I am so she can make her own choices on how open she wants to be to me.
Exactly.
And then when you come in the middle, like it's ninja warrior sexuality. We can go deep and like as like open and playful as we want to be. And then when you step back, it's totally clean.
Right. Very true. Well, and that's the thing. Being open and honest with each other beforehand makes it so much easier because you know who you're dealing with.
Totally. Yeah, let's not hide and pretend nothing's going on or we don't want, like the same conversation isn't about fluids. It's about what are we doing?
Very true. And who are you doing it with?
Totally. Like, what do you want to accomplish here? Like, is this like on its way to a long-term relationship, or is this like we're going to like rock this thing and I'm getting on a plane? I mean, like, what are we doing?
Right. Okay. Now, you sent me that. Now, explain this to me. Now, here's a train of thought that you sent me. It says it's critical to let go of our needs and wants and expectations to quiet our minds enough to listen for what wants to be created. So tell me more about the act of creating intimacy in that container.
Nice.
I like that.
So this is a perfect place for this question. So if I can create an environment, well, here I'll tell you another little story. Okay, so I met this woman at this party, and there was some, you know how, well, you know this, like a woman that just like open up her heart just for a second, you know, like this little like, I'm going to show you my heart for a second. If you're paying attention, you're going to see it, but I'm going to count to 2 and close it up. And
exactly.
I'm at this party, and I like, oh, she totally just. And I said, excuse me, can I just tell you something, you know, personal? She goes, yeah, I want to have sex with you. And she like looks at me and she says, you know what? I want to have sex with you too. I'm like, awesome. So we ended up back at my place after this party, and I'm in there fumbling around with like candles and getting this, you know, the speaker synced up thing, and she says, I feel uncomfortable. I'm like, uh-oh, all right. So I just stopped everything, and I just kneeled down in front of her, and I looked her right in the eye and said, like, there's nobody here but you and I. There's nothing here but you and I. It's just, you know, our 2 curiosities coming together. And she was like, all right, well, then what about all the projection, like what you want me to, you know, what this is all supposed to be? I got nothing. I got no projection. I don't want this to be anything else than just who you are right now. And she's like, okay, I'm back. So it's like creating this little moment of quiet connection, you know,
right.
To get connected, you know, on a place where there's nothing happening, no expectations, and no performance. You don't know what's going to happen in the next 3 seconds. And then you quietly listen for where it wants to go.
Right.
And you can just like reach out and touch one finger to the other person's finger and start driving it around in the air. Or you can just like start with something that creates a flow. And once you start listening to the flow in this like quiet place of just letting it unfold, you know, that's where the magic happens.
Right.
And there's a lot of people that like find themselves in that little sometime, and it's rare, and you go, oh, I love that moment. Like, where did that come from? Create that, you know? Like, there's a discipline to just like climb in front of somebody and just start from this tiny little place of connection, and it's where you can build it out into this like animal passion, like pound-a-thon, you know,
right.
From this little tiny place of connection, and it's beautiful.
Awesome. Kudos that she did that. There's been times where I needed to just say that to somebody and didn't have the guts to do it. So
exactly.
That's awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, I've told you. Yeah.
I've said it in my head,
thing.
but couldn't get my voice to say it.
Yeah. So then I encourage women to do that. Just stop it cold. Say, all right, hold on a second. I feel uncomfortable. And see what the dude does. If he can like regulate and go, all right, hold on. Let's just, what's happening?
Yeah.
You know.
Totally get that.
It's important.
So we need to lay the groundwork to understand ourselves before we start to have any real honest communication. I'm big on understanding ourselves. So what would you like to share about that?
So the fundamental part of that question is before we have the capacity to understand anybody else, or to truly see somebody, or ask them to be more of who they are, we have to know ourselves.
Yes.
So much of connection really comes back to how can I know myself, or how can I, take on the responsibility myself for these actions? How can I generate an offer from a place of vulnerability where, I'm gonna offer this, and she could totally laugh at me because it may sound totally ridiculous, but it's kind of what I want to do. But, I'm going to do it anyways because I'm trying to grow. If I could get this to happen creatively, it would be kind of awesome. I would feel more fully expressed in this world if I could co-create this little thing that I'd love to do. I've always wanted to tie one of the wrists up just tie your wrists up, and see if that would change anything. Just some little thing. So it's so much of our, collaboration with other people starts from understanding yourself.
Right. It does. Now, I love reading. Whenever somebody does different sections to their book, they always put quotes in each one of the sections. And I like that. And I figure, I know when I do that, it's something important that I put in there because,
right.
It just, every word I put in a book is important in some way. So I tell people, I said, if I put it in there, read it because it's there for a reason. Okay, so I really like, I like each one of them, but I really like part 4, okay, where you put my erotic awakening. And you said, as a boy, I wanted to dance naked and be loved for it. Once I entered the harsh and mechanical world with my ego to protect me, I managed to keep that dream alive. I experimented with innovative creations and remained transparent so others could build on my discoveries. Sharing them led me to discover it's not my ego, but my curiosity that gives me strength to perform the great heroic enactment of who I am. A wild and precious dance that could not be performed in any other way but naked. Tell me about that.
Nice. Yeah. So I'll break it down. So if I am not worried about being validated by other people, and I don't need to be, I can't, so if I'm not being validated by other people, I can't be manipulated. So if I can't be manipulated and I've got nothing to hide, because I'm transparent, then I don't need to defend myself. So through the act of just coming clean with everything, no secrets, no lies, no hidden agenda, no trying to increase the chances of getting what I want, I'm totally at peace with asking for what I want and shutting up, and I see things as opportunities in life that I invest in, and I know nothing about my future beyond that. I become completely transparent, so I don't have to carry around this baggage of defending myself. So through my transparency, I'm able to stay curious, so that my ability to look at the world, be curious of the people I meet, of gathering information and running it through my body allows me to see in its, that gets actually created by my choices and enact myself, which is the greatest expression of anything, is to just be my entire expression, my unique person in this world, that has a right to be here as much as anybody else. So that's a huge, a life lesson experience to get to that point. But to find that destination allows one to just live a life in peace and harmony.
Interesting. I know my curiosity drives me far more than anything else because I always want to learn something new. So.
Right. Yeah, and it keeps you in your curiosity. You're not in your defense. You're not sad. You're not protecting yourself. You're not looking at other people as a threat. All that stuff. You just shut all that stuff down, and your brain has this huge capacity to learn.
Yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, I'd learn 24/7 if I could. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's always something new and exciting to learn. So.
Yeah. And that's how all of that translates back to how do we become better innovators? How do we create a world where we all can thrive together? That's my ultimate mission.
Yep, and we can do it. We just got to work at it. So, Very true. Well, I'll tell you what, we're just about out of time, and I actually didn't ask you enough about your invention. Tell us about the Ryno.
Okay. Picture a Ducati motorcycle in half, and the handlebars, where the gas tank was, and the seat. It's a big fat tire. You ride it around. It's like a lifestyle product, so you ride it around in the city, and I can't even go 100 feet without somebody stopping me and wanting to take a picture next to this thing. So,
I would think. Very attractive.
Yeah, it's crazy. And 20 million views on some of our YouTube videos. It's a total geek fest right now. We're doing a licensing deal with a couple of manufacturing partners now, so the bike's really going to finally be out maybe springtime next year. I'm actually doing a Ryno hydrofoil, which is picture surfboard riding along on this hydrofoil perfectly flat, and then picture the Ryno bike on top of that. So that's going to be a total new blowout lifestyle product. So yeah, it's an exciting time for me right now. That stuff's all warming up, and then the book sales is tracking, and I'm just feeling like it's just a vibrant time in my life.
I got to tell you though, I read about the accident, and oh my goodness, oh my heavens,
yeah,
very vivid way to start the book. I was reading it, and I was like, oh my, ow, yeah.
Well, accidents happen. When the gyro comes unplugged from a self-balancing vehicle, you do a face plant.
Yeah, that was a hell of a face plant. Oh my, ow. Like I said, a vivid way to start the book. There was no missing that impact.
Got your attention.
But well, they do say to start, grab the reader's attention, and you got it. You got it in the first paragraph. So,
well,
wow.
Everybody should look for it. Heart and Gear and Engineers Erotic Journey to Freedom.
Definitely. Well, how can they find you? How can they find your website and more information about the book and your all what you got going on? How can they find you?
Yeah, just go to my website, heartandgear.com. Look at my manifesto on the page. There's a link to my book right there. There's a couple of great videos. The Bowerbird stories in the middle of one of the videos, my TED Talks there. So, yeah, do that. And then rynomotors.com, RYNO Motors.com is my one-wheel motorcycle. So check that out. And just send me an email and get our newsletter and stay in touch.
Awesome. Well, what I'll do is there's a page on my website I created. So if you go to readyforloveradio.com/heartingear, you will find a replay of today's show, and you'll find information about Christopher and his book and links to him on social media and his websites and all that information. So I'll have it all in one place for you.
Thanks, Nikki.
And I may have even found a video that will show you the Ryno. You just never know. So
there's a lot of stuff out there. I mean, I've got a couple of...
No accident videos though. I won't include one of those.
Oh yeah. We got some new software and much stronger batteries, and so it's a really solid bike now.
Awesome. Well, it was great to have you with me. I knew it would be an interesting conversation. I just had this feeling.
Good.
So, very good. So it was great talking to you. And
all right, well, have a great day.
Listeners, I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And like I said, there will be a replay on the website. And I'll see you next time on Ready for Love Radio.